A Kidnapped Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. Part 2. The Demon's Scheme.
Last week, we visited Santa Claus in the Laughing Valley, and we met the 5 demons and learned they disliked Santa Claus very much because all the children are satisfied with his gifts. Today, we continue with Part 2, The Demon's Scheme.
So the very next day, while Santa Claus was busily at work, surrounded by his little band of assistants, the demon of selfishness came to him and said,
"These toys are wonderfully bright and pretty. Why do you not keep them for yourself? It's a pity to give them to those noisy boys and fretful girls who break and destroy them so quickly."
"Nonsense," cried the old greybeard, his bright eyes twinkling merrily as he turned towards the tempting demon.
"The boys and girls are never so noisy and fretful after receiving my presents. And if I can make them happy for one day of the year, I'm quite content."
So the demon went back to the others who awaited him in their caves and said,
"I have failed, for Santa Claus is not at all selfish."
The following day, the demon of envy visited Santa Claus. Said he, "The toy shops are full of playthings, quite as pretty as those you are making. What a shame it is that they should interfere with your business. Oh, they make toys by machinery much quicker than you can make them by hand, and they sell them for money while you get nothing at all for your work."
But Santa Claus refused to be envious of the toy shops. "I can supply the little ones but once a year on Christmas Eve," he answered. "For the children are many, and I'm but one. And as my work is one of love of kindness, I would be ashamed to receive money for my little gifts. But throughout all the year, the children must be amused in some way, and so the toy shops are able to bring much happiness to my little friends. I like the toy shops, and I'm glad to see them prosper."
In spite of the second rebuff, the demon of hatred thought he would try to influence Santa Claus. So the next day, he entered the busy workshop and said,
"Good morning, Santa. I have bad news for you."
"Oh, then run away, like a good fellow," answered Santa Claus. "Bad news is something that should be kept secret and never told."
"You cannot escape this, however," declared the demon, "for in the world are a good many who do not believe in Santa Claus, and these you are bound to hate bitterly, since they have so wronged you."
"Stuff and rubbish," cried Santa.
"And there are others who resent your making children happy, and who sneer at you and call you a foolish old rattle-pate. You are quite right to hate such space slanderers, and you ought to be revenged upon them for their evil words."
"But I don't hate them," exclaimed Santa Claus positively. "Such people do me no real harm, but merely render themselves and their children unhappy. Poor things, I'd much rather help them any day than injure them."
Indeed, the demons could not tempt old Santa Claus in any way. On the contrary, he was shrewd enough to see that their object in visiting him was to make mischief and trouble, and his cheery laughter disconcerted the evil ones and showed to them the folly of such an undertaking. So they abandoned honeyed words and determined to use force.
It is well known that no harm can come to Santa Claus while he is in Laughing Valley, for the fairies, the Ryls, and Nooks all protect him. But on Christmas Eve, he drives his reindeer out into the big world, carrying a sleigh load of toys and pretty gifts to the children. And this was the time and the occasion when his enemies had the best chance to injure him. So the demons laid their plans and awaited the arrival of Christmas Eve.
The moon shone big and white in the sky, and the snow lay crisp and sparkling on the ground as Santa Claus cracked his whip and sped away out of the valley into the great world beyond. The roomy sleigh was packed with huge sacks of toys. And as the reindeer dashed onward, our jolly old Santa laughed and whistled and sang for very joy. For in all his merry life, this was the one day during the year when he was happiest. The day he lovingly bestowed the treasures of his workshop upon the little children.
It would be a busy night for him, he well knew. As he whistled and shouted and cracked his whip again, he reviewed in mind all the towns and cities and farmhouses where he was expected, and figured that he had just enough presents to go around and make every child happy.
The reindeer knew exactly what was expected of them and dashed along so swiftly that their feet scarcely seemed to touch the snow-covered ground.
Suddenly, a strange thing happened. A rope shot through the moonlight, and a big noose that was at the end of it settled over the arms and body of Santa Claus and drew tight. Before he could resist or even cry out, he was jerked from the seat of the sleigh and tumbled headforemost into a snowbank, while the reindeer rushed onward with a load of toys and carried it away quickly out of sight and sound.
Join us next week when we find out what has happened to Santa Claus and what is the fate of the reindeer pulling the toy-filled sleigh.